welcome to meeting number 65 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights. Pursuant to order adopted by the House on March 8, 2023, the committee is meeting in public to continue its study on Bill C-295, an act to amend the criminal code. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23, 2022. Members are attending in person and remotely using the Zoom application. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses and members. So please wait till I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those that are on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. So I would adjust it to that setting now. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raised hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. We appreciate your patience and understanding in this regards. So now I would like to welcome all by video conference our witnesses for today. First, we have from BC Care Providers, Terry Lake, Chief Executive.
Have the tests all been done and all the witnesses approved?
For Madame LaRoche, just wanted to let her know, yes, all interpretations have been tested, so we should be good.
Randy, I'm told those online can't hear a thing.
Oh, can hear nods like from Mr. Lake, Ms. Silas and Ms. Hall and Frank, can you not hear us? The analyst, I can't hear you. I know she's trying to say something. Okay, 1 second, we'll get the clerk to figure this out.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Did you hear the whole Zoom stuff and the interpretation and no? Okay, I'll do a Coles Note version.
Yeah, we certainly did, Chair.
I know Frank will say he did. For those of you that are not members, just to select at the bottom of your screen the interpretation that you want, English, French, or the floor if you're bilingual. If you're going to ask questions, raise your hands. We'll use the raise hand function, and then the clerk and I will do our best to acknowledge you. And I was just about to introduce you. So I'll begin by, I'll first identify the three witnesses. I think we have from BC Care Providers, Terry Lake, Chief Executive Officer. From video conference, we have Canadian Association for Long-Term Care, Jody Hall. Thank you and welcome. And then we have also by video conference from the Canadian Federation of Nurses Union, Linda Silas. So I will begin by having our good friend and frequent visitor to this committee and others, Terry Lake, for 5 minutes, and then we'll go to the next, and then we'll go for a round of questions. So over to you, Terry.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good day to members of the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights. I'm coming to you today from beautiful Kamloops, British Columbia, and Secwepemc-Ulo, the traditional territory of the Secwepemc-Kamloops First Nations. My name is Terry Lake. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the British Columbia Care Providers Association, which is the largest organization representing contracted providers of long-term care and assisted living in BC. We comprise both not-for-profit and for-profit organizations. And through our operating arm, Engage BC, we also represent private home health providers and independent living providers. I've been in this role for 2.5 years, but previously from 2013 to 2017, served as BC's Minister of Health, responsible for seniors care in the province. In our province, long-term care is provided by health authorities, nonprofit societies, and for-profit corporations, each responsible for approximately 1/3 of long-term care residents, of which there are approximately 30,000. So why this bill? Following the first wave of COVID-19, before vaccination was available, there was indeed serious concern about the impact of the virus on vulnerable residents of long-term care homes. Approximately 80% of deaths in Canada after that first wave occurred in these settings, and we witnessed terrible scenes, particularly in the provinces of Ontario and Quebec, where Canadian Armed Forces personnel were dispatched to care for residents. Chronically underfunded homes had staffing challenges before the pandemic, and with many staff falling ill to the virus or simply too scared to go to work, residents were sometimes left in terrible circumstances. So it's easy to understand the motivation for action to prevent these terrible situations from being repeated. The speech from the throne in 2020 indicated the government was going to do just that. And at that time, I provided a submission to this committee indicating that provisions in the existing criminal code already provide measures very similar to what this bill is intended to do. And these include sections 219, 220, and 221. Criminal negligence occurs when a person causes death or bodily harm when that person, one, has a duty imposed by law, which would include, of course, regulation of care facilities, does or omits to do something and thereby shows a wanton or reckless disregard for the life of safety or of others, and three, thereby causes death or bodily harm. Also, section 217 of the criminal code, the current criminal code, says a person who has authority to direct how another person does work is under a legal duty to take responsible steps to prevent bodily harm to that person and bodily harm to another person arising from that work. So that's the existing criminal code. But of course, every province and territory has legislation and regulations that hold operators and employees to account for any neglect resulting in harm to residents. In BC, the Community Care and Assisted Living Act and regulations include a section called Harmful Actions Not Permitted, and this is under Section 52. A licensee must ensure that a person in care is not, while under the care or supervision of the licensee, subjected to any of the following. A, any of the following types of abuse or neglect as described in Section 1 of Schedule D, which include emotional abuse, financial abuse, neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and also deprivation of food or fluids as a form of punishment. My colleague Jody Hall of the Canadian Association of Long-Term Care will speak about the chilling effect these proposed criminal code changes could have and likely would have on recruitment and retention of workers in long-term care. But let me just say that staffing is the number one challenge we face in caring for our elders. That was the case before the pandemic. It's still the case. So anything that exacerbates that challenge will in fact result in less care, not more care. I know this bill was put forward not to make the situation worse, obviously. So what I'm suggesting is that if the government feels seniors in care do lack protection of any type, it should put forward its own legislation that goes through a robust engagement strategy to understand the potential positive and negative outcomes. I remind the committee that provincial health authorities and municipalities would be impacted by this bill, and there is currently next to no awareness about this bill. Health authority officials in British Columbia expressed surprise when I raised this at a recent regular meeting between health authorities and the ministry, and only now are they performing due diligence on this bill. All Canadians, and certainly providers of long-term care services, care deeply about vulnerable adults that require complex care in nursing homes. Operators have contributed to the formation of national standards, have supported efforts to train more healthcare professionals, and are determined to continuously improve our system of care. All operators and organizations like BC Care Providers will continue to work diligently with all levels of government to make sure this happens. With that, I am happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lake. Now, before we go, I just want to wish all the nurses out there, it's Happy Nursing Week. So kudos that we all celebrate all the great work, and especially during the pandemic, everyone realized the hard and important work that nurses do. So next we have Jody Hall of the Canadian Association for Long-Term Care Workers.
Members of the committee, I want to start by thanking you for inviting me to appear before you today to discuss Canada's long-term care sector. My name is Jody Hall, and I'm the CEO of the Canadian Association for Long-Term Care, also known as CALTEC. CALTEC is committed to ensuring quality long-term care for all, and we advocate on behalf of seniors in long-term care homes and our members. Our members include many of the provincial long-term care associations and a range of long-term care operators from nonprofit, faith-based, and private corporations. Caltech appreciates the spirit of the proposed bill to protect vulnerable adults, and we support the introduction of legislation that would address elder abuse in Canada. However, the bill before the committee does not accomplish that. And if it were to pass in its current form, I believe it would be likely to have a devastating impact on the long-term care sector throughout the country. Long-term care homes are currently facing a number of issues impacting the ability to be sustainable. And firstly, the health human resource crisis is a critical challenge. The latest data from Statistics Canada from the final quarter of 2022 notes that there are over 38,000 vacant positions in Canada in long-term care homes, and this is more than double the number of vacancies from 2019. Provinces are making investments in long-term care, and the leadership and frontline teams in long-term care homes remain dedicated to provide high-quality resident care every day, but they are doing so with limited resources and many in homes that have aged infrastructure available to them. Our sector needs support. We face significant systemic issues, including widespread staffing shortages, the aged infrastructure, and chronic underfunding. And these are not new. Decades of underinvestment laid the foundations for the perfect storm, which painfully played out through the pandemic and have left homes continuing to struggle today. In the last election, the government committed to investing $9 billion in long-term care over 5 years, and unfortunately, we're still waiting for that commitment to be realized. But these investments could be used to help support recruitment of staff, increase our standards of care, and invest in the much-needed infrastructure that's required. And while long-term care has gotten more attention as of late, we have not, as a country, come together to talk about creating a sustainable long-term care sector. In the next 15 years, there will be another 10 million seniors in Canada. We need to address the questions around long-term care sustainability. But today, we are here to address Bill C-295, and Caltech members are unequivocal in our denunciation of elder abuse in all forms. This bill has the potential to have a devastating impact on long-term care homes while not addressing the multifaceted considerations that is needed for elder abuse legislation in Canada. As well, the definition of manager is so broadly defined within this bill that it includes almost all long-term care staff. As it stands, this bill focuses on employees in long-term care and only in long-term care, as other settings that provide similar care to similar employees, often to those who are waiting to be admitted to a long-term care home, for example, a hospital, are not noted. We believe that this will further increase the challenges around recruitment and retention. Creating further obstacles to recruitment and retention for long-term care is not the way to improve quality or safety in the homes. All levels of government have the opportunity to work with the long-term care sector to build a resilient path forward, but unfortunately, I believe that the bill as presented does not take advantage of that opportunity. Moving forward, the government should launch inclusive consultations with long-term care residents, families, providers, and others in the healthcare system to identify existing gaps in elder abuse protections and how best to effectively address them without causing unintentional impacts that would have, as this private member bill will do. If the committee should choose to proceed with this bill, we at the very least ask that the scope of the bill is not limited to long-term care facilities and long-term care managers, but is refocused on all healthcare settings and all healthcare professionals to not result in inequalities in recruitment and retention being directed at long-term care homes alone. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Next, we'll go to Linda Silas, President of the Canadian Federation of Nurses.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chair, for acknowledging Nurses Suite. I'm Linda Silas, National President for the Canadian Federation of Nurses Union, and CFNU is the largest nursing organization in Canada, honestly, North America, with 250,000 nurses and nursing students. And it's an honor to speak to you today, and thank you for the invitation. I'll start off by acknowledging the importance advocacy this bill is bringing by its sponsor, the Honorable Dr. Eddie Fry, who put her conviction into action by advancing this bill through Parliament. Like Dr. Fry, I too was mortified by what I saw unfolding in long-term care sector the months following the start of COVID-19 pandemic. I also expressed deep concern about the quality of care provided in a sector long before COVID-19. In 2015, CFNU commissioned a report entitled Before It's Too Late, a National Plan for Safe Seniors Care, because we knew what that with our aging population and critically understaffed long-term care facility, we needed to ensure seniors receive the care they deserve. In 2015, we sounded the alarm bell. Since that report was published, little change to residents in these facilities has suffered greatly. Nurses were pleased when the long-term care standard services released earlier this year, but know that much more needs to be done. The standards aren't mandatory, so without legislation requiring facilities to carry out the quality of care across the board, including a minimum of 4.1 hours of direct care per resident per day, seniors remain vulnerable. Dr. Fry's bills allow us to continue shining a light on long-term care. I strongly support the intention of the bill to bring safety and well-being to residents. I'm not going to quote the criminal code. However, nurses are very concerned with the definition of manager in the bill. It would create a situation in which workers within these facilities who do not have senior decision-making responsibility for the operation, financial decision could be held criminally responsible for the quality of care residents receive. Tasks associated with the definition of manager in the bill are reflective of tasks carried out by unionized nurses in these facilities. For instance, regulated nurses serve in leadership roles within long-term care facility, engaging in activities such as training, supervising staff. They may be involved in hiring, scheduling of staff, and lead the planning and coordination of provision of care to residents. These nurses are not responsible for determining the budget of the facility they work, leading to how many staff are hired, the extent of the training they receive, and other conditions within these facilities which have led to dire outcome for residents. The actual owners of those who make key decisions around resourcing and quality of care are often many levels above the nurses on the floor. We know that the for-profit long-term care home, the profit motive competed directly with the duty to provide care with optimal care. In Ontario, data shows that these homes, with significantly higher rate of COVID-19 deaths, employed an average 17% fewer workers than non-for-profit municipality home, but they can't afford to pay the dividends to their shareholders. At a time of unprecedented shortage of nurses in all areas of nursing across the country, the current wording of this bill could push more nurses out of long-term care and act as an obstacle for recruiting in these especially challenging times. On behalf of Canada's nurses, I call upon this committee to recommend changes to the word manager to be meant any person who has senior decision-making responsibility for financial and other decisions regarding the full list of responsibility under the definition of this bill. Thank you, and I'll answer any question needed. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll begin our first round of questions. And for those that don't know me, I do use cue cards. So when you're down to 30 seconds, just watch for the yellow cue card. And when you're out of time, the red, and just try to wrap it up around that time. I don't like interrupting. So I'll begin by Mr. Moore for 5 minutes. Sorry, 6 minutes.
Great. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to all of our witnesses for appearing today on this private members bill. And your expertise is certainly really valued. And I'll say at the outset, we are all obviously against elder abuse, but we want to make sure, as I think one of our witnesses used the expression, unintended consequences. So we want to make sure that whatever we deal with as parliamentarians achieves the goals that it sets out to achieve and does not have negative consequences. So I'm going to ask my question to Jody Hall. You mentioned challenges that you see within the legislation itself. This is a private member's bill, but at this committee, we have the opportunity to consider from witnesses ideas for amendments. Do you have some suggestions that would make this bill more palatable or more, in your view, more useful? The last thing we would want is a piece of legislation that discourages people from taking employment in an area that so desperately needs it. So do you have some suggestions in that regard?
Thank you for the question. So we remain deeply concerned about the overall scope and impact of Bill C-295 as presented. And clearly, because we feel that there are already many of these challenges that are addressed within provincial legislation and within the criminal code as it exists today, certainly feel that, moving away from this legislation would be our first choice. But secondly to that, if the committee is putting this bill through, we would ask that they would reconsider the definition of the manager, in that it's only specific to the long-term care manager, as well as long-term care facility. So those need to be more broadly, we would recommend that they're more broadly applied across the healthcare system. And for us, when we consider that the intent of this bill is to address elder abuse, and we would have staff that would work, very similar staff providing very similar care in a hospital setting, for example, why would this legislation only target elder abuse that would be present in a long-term care environment and not in a hospital setting, for example? So for a recommendation of amendments, it would be to focus on those areas and broadening out sort of the setting and the professionals that it would apply to.
So I guess I'm hearing, and I want to reconcile these two things. On one hand, I'm hearing from some of our witnesses a broadening, but also we're hearing about a narrowing. So is it correct to say narrowing in the sense that within a institution, how and who this legislation would apply to, but broadening in the sense that it doesn't create two standards for institutions that are doing like work, the example of a hospital versus long-term care facility, so that one is not disadvantaged compared to the other when it comes to recruitment and the standard that we hold them to. Is that correct? You would also like to see a narrowing, right, on within the institution on who and how this would apply?
Well, to be clear, we do not support this legislation as presented. I want to be very clear on that point. There are so many serious challenges within long-term care. We feel that the risk that it poses to recruitment and retention within the long-term care sector is significant. And there are accountability mechanisms already in place within the criminal code and within provincial jurisdiction of long-term care legislation and standards and regulations and inspections, just to name a few. But if the committee is compelled to put this legislation forward, we would ask that to address the inequalities that it would create in identifying just the long-term care sector, that would be broadened to the entire healthcare sector, especially given that it's meant to address elder abuse.
Understood. That makes sense. Now, this committee undertook a study on elder abuse back a couple of years ago. There was mixed opinions coming out when it comes to amending the criminal code. Where there was consensus was on prevention of elder abuse. I think you mentioned that. There's sometimes when something's before us, we sometimes imagine that there's a complete vacuum of law, but you had mentioned provincial regulation that is already in place. Can you speak a bit to that?
Yes, there are extensive accountability measures that are in place at the provincial level. This is the responsibility of the jurisdiction of provincial governments to ensure this level of oversight of long-term care homes, regardless of the type of home that it is. All long-term care homes would be subject to the provincial regulations, standards, and that's not to mention other pieces of legislation that come into play, like an occupational health and safety piece of legislation as well.
I'm out of time, but thank you to all our witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Next, we'll go to Ms. Diab for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to all our witnesses. I think we can all agree on the committee and on witnesses that the impetus of the bill is clear, that the member sponsoring the bill, it's to address the issue of neglect of vulnerable adults, particularly in long-term care facilities, given what we saw during the pandemic and the state of our long-term care facilities at that time. So one thing we're preoccupied about as a committee is preventing the tragedies that were reported on by the military when they were deployed from happening again. Let me ask Mr. Lake, get your views a little bit on. Do you see this bill preventing those tragedies that took place in the pandemic from happening? I guess secondly, who does it hold the right people accountable for those issues, or, in your opinion, who do you hold responsible?
Well, it's a complex question, and I think that is why the need for a thorough consultation to understand. We all understand the motivation behind the bill, but to understand the best mechanism to accomplish the goals, I think would require extensive stakeholder consultation. If you think back to, March of 2020, and we've all lost track of time, but if you put your mind back there, we didn't know what we didn't know. All we knew is that there was this virus out there that was deadly, particularly to older people. And if you put yourself in as a long-term care personal service worker, for instance, in particularly the provinces of Quebec and Ontario at the time, where there was a high incidence of a virus prevalent in those care homes. First of all, if you were sick, you didn't go to work. But if you weren't sick and you were afraid for your family, you didn't really know what to do. And I don't think this legislation, if people are that scared to go to work, I don't think this legislation would have compelled them to go. Now, thankfully, the vast majority of long-term care workers did in fact go to work. And those who did go to work performed heroically to keep our seniors well and safe. So I think there are better mechanisms. I think Jody has touched on a few of those. Properly funding long-term care. As you know, long-term care is now covered under the Canada Health Act, and it varies by province, but generally speaking, the province will pay for a portion of the costs of long-term care, and then the resident and their family will pay the balance, and often that's income tested. But it has suffered from chronic understaffing for many, many years. There's a bit of a stigma that is applied to health professionals working in long-term care. So they may choose acute care, thinking it's a better form of healthcare for them to be in. And ageism is part of that, no question about it. So the difficulty in recruiting into long-term care has always been a challenge. Anything that makes people think twice about going into long-term care or home care for that matter, because this would apply to people providing home care as well, would make them think about other healthcare settings before long-term care. So I think we can do a lot to protect seniors in care by increasing investment, by increasing hours of care, by increasing the incentives and recruitment retention strategies, all of which, by the way, the provinces are all working on at the moment. But we really, as Dr. Samir Sinha often points out when he's doing media, that Canada underfunds seniors care by about 15% compared to other OECD countries.
So I've got another question. I'm not really sure who to direct it to, but given the staffing structures, the complicated structure and the number of people that intersect with a resident, I guess I'm wondering, how do you, who do you hold accountable, I guess, if something like that goes wrong, in your opinion, I suppose? And then secondly, I would ask if anyone, if you're aware of, I think you've all said that there's criminal code provisions, there's provincial legislation. We all know we've got 10 provinces and territories. They all probably have different things in their statutes. Like, I suppose, what is missing here? What is the missing link to try to achieve what we're trying to achieve? Maybe I'll ask you, Ms. Silas. I know it's the nurses union, but haven't heard from you yet. So, what would you say to that?
Thank you. To add to Mr. Lake's presentation, let's be clear, we know what to do. We have occupational health and safety standards that are approved across this country. We have infection control standards that are approved and recognized across this country. And we have staffing mechanisms that are approved across this country. What is missing is proper funding for long-term care, home care, and all, regulation and mandated standards. This federal government just passed national standards for long-term care, but not mandated. And that's what has to happen is it has to be recognized that in long-term care, and Jody explained there's a difference between home care, residence care, and long-term care, but in long-term care, they are sick residents. They're not what we used to see, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and the ones walk around and go shopping. We have most of our long-term care facilities are level 4, and they need the appropriate 4 to 1 hours of care. Ontario is the only province now that has, by 2025, put on paper that they will look at 4 hours of care. But again, how is it going to be implemented? Only by serious funding to our long-term care, match with the standards and the regulations, so the disasters that happened at the beginning of the pandemic. And let's be honest.
Thank you.
Things weren't rosy before either.
Thank you, Ms. Silas. Thank you, Ms. Diab. We'll next go to Mademoiselle LaRouche for 6 minutes.
Merci. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our 3 witnesses for being here today. And of course, I would like to take a moment to also underline that it's the week of nurses, and that, of course, is related to our witnesses this week. They do exceptional work, and to follow on from what Mr. Lake has said in response to an answer, I remain convinced that care are not just underfunded for the elderly, but in general, healthcare is underfunded in Canada, and that is why, in full solidarity with the nursing personnel, I continue to push for an increase in the health transfers. That's part of our position, and I think that the subject today is directly related to this increase needed in the Canada health transfers. We talked about going up to 35%. We have to better support and better finance staffing, which means there needs to be better financing and better support and better financial resources for the healthcare system. So those were my opening words. And now I'm going to turn to my first question for Ms. First of all, now this is interesting, because in answer to a question you said that this bill just refers to specific facilities, specific care facilities, so it doesn't deal with all the questions of abuse which don't just take place in long-term care facilities or one type of residence. We see diversification, in fact, of places where the elderly reside. We need to bear that in mind when we're talking about abuse, and I know that in Quebec, we're looking at the question of home care as well. So things are becoming more and more diverse. And I'd also like to hear from you, because in your brief, you mentioned the fact that this just deals with a type of specific abuse, namely physical abuse, but you've said there's lots of other types of abuse, such as financial or psychological abuse. There's different types of abuse out there. So I'd like to hear from you on what's missing in the bill and what could be done. Ms. Hall, please.
Thank you for the question. So as per the brief that we submitted, we do believe that there is absolutely needed enhancements to address elder abuse in Canada. One, we need to have it formally defined so it's consistently considered across the country as well. Elder abuse is much more than the physical aspect. We do need to consider social abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse. And these are challenging issues that are experienced not only in a particular setting, but for all seniors across the country. So we certainly would support the introduction of elder abuse legislation in Canada that would have the time to be able to thoroughly conduct consultations and engagement with critical stakeholders across the country, including police and many other organizations to be able to address, this is a growing challenge.
And as a follow-up, in the report entitled Elders Abuse, Identifying Issues, and this was published in 2021, there were 4 recommendations that were made by the government to set up protection mechanisms for whistleblowers when it comes to long-term care. And so I've got a question on that. Do you think that this bill will actually help whistleblowers as an employee to actually blow the whistle if there is abuse taking place against elders?
No, I don't believe that this bill will provide any type of enhancement for the accountability structures that are in place today at the provincial level. We can also look to the criminal code as it exists right now. There is examples through legal precedent, and I'm not a lawyer, but I can speak to what has been shared with me. And we can point to the precedents that have been established through the Westray mine disaster and the ability to determine who the directing mind is when criminal charges are warranted. So I would point to those as ways that accountability can be driven today.
Alors, très bien, merci. Thank you very much, Ms. Hall. And I'd like to put another question to you and come back to this question of definition, because in my first question we were talking about different types of abuse, but I'd like to come back to this question of the actual definition of the long-term care facilities, because it's a facility or part of a long-term care facility which offers long-term residence, meals, etc., and it refers to 3 residents or plus. So I'd like to hear from you on that definition. Do you think it's complete, or do you think that there's certain adjustments that have to be made? I know you've flagged a few, but would you like to add any other modifications?
Well, I think what I would just note is that that is an incredibly broad definition of a long-term care facility and would encapsulate almost all types of long-term care organizations across the continuum of long-term care. So whether that's, and not necessarily just focused on those organizations that care for older adults, but an entire range of community care organizations that provide extended care. So the definition is incredibly broad and would need to be considered if that is the intent of this committee.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Mr. Garrison for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses for being with us today. In particular, I know for many of them it was short notice to appear, and so I do appreciate you being here. I want to start by saying that, with all due respect to my colleagues on the committee and our witnesses, it seems to me that this bill did not arise out of the larger questions about care of seniors in this country or elder abuse. It arose out of a crisis during COVID when we saw Canada having to send its military in to provide assistance in long-term care homes. And I think in our discussion with Dr. Fry in the last meeting, it was pretty clear that that's what she was really aiming at in this bill, not to disparage or diminish any of those other concerns. And I think two things are clear about that. One is that workers in long-term care struggled heroically through the crisis to try and provide the necessary care. But despite that struggle, we ended up with one of the worst records among wealthy countries for deaths from COVID in our long-term care. And so that leads us to the question of why that happened. And it's been phrased or framed a couple of ways. Quite often it said, why didn't workers do their jobs? But I think there's an alternative frame is why we're not able to provide that care. So I'd like to ask Ms. Silas to address that question about why did we end up with such a poor record during COVID and the framing of that question.
Staffing, staffing, staffing. You know, if we want to put seniors at the middle of the equation and prevent elders' care, it will not be through the Criminal Act. Let's be honest. We have to put respecting seniors' care on top of our list, and that is respecting the workforce who just love their seniors. It's probably one of the areas of nursing, and I say nursing as broadly because it includes personal care workers, volunteers, families, where there's a visceral love for what they do, and they don't have the resource, they don't have the respect. So a criminal act is not going to change anything. It's really putting seniors' care as a priority.
Specific situation that arose during COVID, what would you say, as a representative of nurses, was the cause for these higher death rates in the long-term care homes than in other countries?
They worked behind the curtains all the time. Nobody was taking care of it. Like we said, in 2015, we came out with a report saying about the understaffing, the lack of training, the lack of personnel, etc. And nobody was listening because it was a question of dollars and cents. It wasn't a question on how we took care of seniors. And what we saw over the years is the profit margins going out. And we saw that during COVID. So that was just an insult to all the healthcare workers that some for-profit homes were making profit, giving money back to shareholders when, and we have to remember, most of the healthcare workers that passed away due to COVID came from the long-term care sector too. So it is about respect, about proper staffing, and giving our seniors, our elders, what they deserve in their last few years.
The record between the public and not-for-profit long-term care homes and the for-profit care homes, you talked about the higher death rate and fewer workers, fewer staff per patient to start with. Can you expand a bit more on how that relates to the problems we're talking about?
What we heard through the pandemic was the for-profit homes were even more restricting the PPEs, for example. That's where you saw the stories of PPEs behind locked doors because it was all addressed to an N95 respirator was a lot more expensive than a paper mask. That's the areas where you saw unions like SEIU do extended studies, and I encourage the committee to have them do a presentation on comparing the for-profit to the not-for-profit. The not-for-profit and the municipality run or the religious runs are really based on community-based, looking at for the care of the seniors. Compare for the for-profit, of course, it says what it is. And the studies, as I said in my statement, showed a higher level of deaths. You're right, Deputy, that we had the worst experience in any developed countries in the world, and that was due to our long-term care, and that's why everyone is studying it now.
In your presentation, you talked about the fact that many people that are captured by this definition of managers in this bill, in fact, don't have any decision-making power, any control over critical decisions on hiring or training. Can you talk a bit more about what that means in practical terms?
Yes, I'm sure Ms. Hall could explain to you every provincial laws, but in most provincial laws for long-term care, there has to be an RN, so a registered nurse assigned on a 24-hour basis. But sometimes that registered nurse is the director of nursing, and he or she are at home in the middle of the night. And then it's the registered nurse who's on the unit, or a licensed practical nurse, or sometimes just personal care workers with somebody on call. So again, when we're talking about criminal act, and Ms. Hall mentioned the Westray Act, it's really to see who makes the final decision. And we guarantee you as a committee, it is not the nurse or the personal care worker on the ward or in the long-term care facility. And often it's not even the director of nursing in that facility or director. It is either the shareholders or the boards of directors, depending. So the act that's proposed now is really flawed because it's talking about managers who direct the day-to-day, but they don't really direct the day-to-day. So we have to find out who directs the day-to-day.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Garrison. We'll now go to our next round for 5 minutes, and that's beginning with Mr. Van Popta.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here and for giving us your very important expert evidence on what is an important issue. But before I do that, I'm just going to address this to the chair. I was looking forward to the next panel of witnesses, department officials, because I had some important technical questions about numbers of convictions and what's wrong with the existing legislation, and what this bill could improve. But I understand they're not coming. And I'm particularly troubled because we're getting competing evidence from our witnesses today, and it's very valuable evidence. Thank you for that. But one witness saying we need to broaden the definition of manager, another say we need to narrow it down. So we really do need expert help, and I'm disturbed that we're not going to be seeing that today. But now, we have these important witnesses in front of us, so I'm going to ask you some questions. So now. Ms. Silas said in her evidence, and she's advocating for a narrower definition of manager, that it shouldn't include lower level workers like the scheduler and the purchasing agent and maybe not even the director of nursing, but it should be focused only on the person making financial decisions. She also said in her testimony that the history of neglect of seniors is worse in for-profit homes than in not-for-profit homes. And so my question is to both to Jody Hall and to Terry Lake, whether that is your experience in your fields and with your associations.
I'm happy to go first if you like, Jody. Certainly in British Columbia, where we have 1/3 government owned and operated, 1/3 for-profit, and 1/3 not-for-profit, there was no discernible difference on the incidence of mortality in care homes based on the ownership type. And I would take some issue, and I think it's a distraction because we spend a lot of time talking about this issue rather than how we can make seniors care better. But if you look at Quebec, for instance, where the Canadian Armed Forces personnel went in and saw some terrible situations, 80% of long-term care is government owned and operated and funded in the province of Quebec. But we point to Ontario situation where there just happens to be a large proportion of for-profit providers, and those for-profit providers have homes that have not had investment through the government investing in new facilities for a long time. So studies in the US show that ownership is not a significant factor. It is the age of the home and the size of the home that determine the difference in mortality. And I would even caution the committee in comments about Canada doing poorly versus similar countries. The Institute for Research on Public Policy just published a paper in the last few months that shows that the mortality rate in Canadian long-term care was about 26 per thousand, which was actually better than about 2/3 of similar countries around the world. we had 80% of our deaths in long-term care because our death rate in the community was so much lower than other countries. So you have to be careful about the data you're using to draw conclusions. And as I said, I think it's a distraction because as Ms. Silas has said, the key to improving care for Canadians in long-term care, home care, is to invest. And we simply need to do that to make sure we have appropriate staffing.
Good, thank you. I'm hoping Jody Hall can respond to that as well.
Yes, and I completely agree with the comments that Terry has laid out. And every type of long-term care home in Canada was impacted by COVID-19. There were no exceptions to that. And we do know that those experiences were largely shaped by the age of the infrastructure and the home's ability to implement infection prevention and control protocols, the amount of square footage that was available where residents lived together, as well, the number of staffing that was available during especially those early days, and access to PPE and education for staff was limited, but it was largely due because there was no PPE available globally. If you recall back to that time, which can feel very far away, but it was an incredible challenge to be able to access the PPE that was required and to have the funding to be able to purchase it.
I'm just going to stop you there because I'm almost out of time,
Yeah.
and I would like to give Ms. Silas an opportunity to respond. Is that okay, Chair?
I'll
Just
give you
like
10
30 seconds, maybe?
15 seconds.
Thank you.
Ms. Hall is probably very right on the access of PPE because, again, we've never put seniors' care as a priority in this country. So they were at the back of the bus to get any PPEs compared to an ICU. So I do agree there. I don't have the references. This was a last minute, but in our brief, we will send the references on comparing the for-profit versus the community and not-for-profit long-term care, both on the death and injuries to healthcare workers in our brief. I commit
you.
to that.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Mr. Zaberi for 5 minutes.
I'd like to thank the witnesses for being here today and for your years of work to promote health, good health of everyone in our society, including seniors. And I think your testimony is extremely valuable in terms of highlighting that we need to look at some of the definitions here and potentially expand the scope in some ways and ensure that we're not capturing those who are not managers in other ways. And je aussi aimerais...
I would also like to say that the reality in Quebec and Ontario was different from what was happening in the rest of Canada during the pandemic in the long-term care facilities.
Au Québec, on a eu un...
In Quebec, we had an inquiry that took place to examine the way in which seniors were treated in these facilities. And we discovered
4,000
that approximately 4,000 people who lost their lives in these facilities.
And was mentioned by Mr. Garrison is part of the reason why this legislation has come forth. And I think that that's the context we're dealing with. But you point out something important in terms of expanding beyond simply these homes to other spaces where seniors are cared for. So just to all the witnesses, I would assume that you would want us to expand it to other facilities and to other domains where seniors are cared for. Is that correct? A quick answer.
If the bill were to go forward, yes, that would be correct.
I would assume that you feel that this is a necessary gap or an area that we should legislate on, given what happened during the COVID pandemic and what that showed in terms of the care of seniors. Would you agree that we need to close the gap and to see that seniors are properly cared for through legislation that encompasses not only the people we're talking about, the managers we're talking about in this space, senior care homes, but in other spaces too. Would you agree to that?
I'm not sure I would agree. We are reacting to a terrible situation with emotion, which is understandable. But we have to think why the situation occurred. And all of the witnesses here today have outlined what those reasons were. The understaffing, the lack of PPE, which is supplied by government, by the way, and it just was not available. The terrifying nature of the virus, the fact that so many people were ill, the fact that they were, really working skeleton crews beforehand because it's been so hard to attract people into the sector.
But
so anything
just around that though, this legislation it doesn't target the rank and file employee. It targets managers and it targets owners who have a responsibility. Do you think that responsibility should fall on their shoulders and that they should be held responsible when there are deaths? Don't you think that this gap must be closed?
Well, first of all, I think the definition is so broad that unintended people are captured. So certainly narrowing the definition within the long-term care.
Let's assume we narrow the definition as you're suggesting, in one sense of not capturing those who aren't managers, and expand it in another sense where we capture managers and owners in other sectors who do care for seniors. If we make those adjustments, don't you think this would be a salutary law?
I think it would be much improved over what we have today, yes.
So that's really helpful, I think, in helping us to think about this, to think about amendments, because in this committee, what we do is that we can amend what's on paper, what we're seeing, and what you're talking about. So that is very, very helpful. We have about 30 seconds. Would somebody like to speak about seniors who aren't in care homes or in hospitals, but in isolated situations, such as in their own homes or in the community?
I can jump in quickly just to say that we do support the development of elder abuse legislation in Canada that is multifaceted and that is attached to the older adult and not to a particular setting. I do want to just very quickly speak to the concept of owner because this legislation as presented does not provide a definition of what a long-term care owner is. And there are a multitude of definitions for how that looks across the country. We have provincial governments who own long-term care homes. We have regional health authorities who own, municipal governments who own these homes. We have Indigenous communities. We have nonprofit community boards. We have faith-based organizations, and we have a range of private corporations. So it's not a simple definition to consider owner, and it is not defined within this legislation as presented.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Zaberi. And we'll go now to our last 2.5-minute rounds, beginning with Ms. LaRoche for 2.5 minutes.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you once again to the witnesses for being here today on this extremely important issue, which is very dear to my heart, as I have worked on this question of abuse before I was elected. Interesting points have been made, and I'll turn to you, Ms. Silas. You have said there's already standards, and that's an observation that has been made in the report from the armed forces, and we've said 80% of the care facilities in Quebec fall under the health system because they're public, and so there's standards that are implemented by the Quebec government, who has a jurisdiction to act vis-a-vis the long-term care facilities. But what's missing are the financial resources. But when it comes to the federal side of things, there's the question of the supply of individual protection equipment, and that was lacking during the pandemic, and that could have been helpful to avoid a great deal of transmission. Having said that, Perhaps, Ms. Silas, you could pick up on that point. Otherwise, I've got another question for you. Do you think that the elders who are residing in long-term care facilities are incapable of being able to cover their own necessities? I've been with other autonomous persons who are living in a precarious situation without family members, can make this choice to go into a long-term care facility. And what is the demographic relative people who actually live in these long-term care facilities? Wow, that's quite a question, MP. Well, first of all, I do not represent the Quebec nurses, and Quebec has a system which is completely different from the rest of Canada. That's definitely the case, and I'm not capable to answer on those questions. But as I said in English earlier, the priority for long-term care and for elders' care does not exist in any province nor in any territory. It's not a priority. Ms. Hull has correctly explained that the responsibility can flow from the government or from a municipality or an Indigenous community or the private sector. So it's important for the federal government to establish standards, and the federal government has just announced standards that are very good, but they're not mandatory, they're not compulsory. So whether it's the province of Quebec or my province of New Brunswick, they look at these nice documents, but it's not compulsory, nor is it attached to funding. So we need to take standards and attach them to funding, and then afterwards see if it's necessary to actually change the criminal code or not.
I hope I'm okay with time, Ms. LaRouche. My clock was a little off, but I guesstimated it was about 2.5 minutes. Mr. Garrison for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to go back to Ms. Silas on the question that Mr. Lake refuted of the difference between public and private facilities, because in the studies that I'm aware of, they all showed higher death rates for workers in long-term care from COVID and for residents. And I know you don't have the full statistics at hand, but can you just tell us a bit about what you have heard that on those specific studies on the differences between private for-profit and non-profit long-term care homes?
Thank you for the question. What we're working with is the death rate in for-profit home is twice as high as the other nursing homes that we see. I mentioned in my presentation, 17% higher. Those are the numbers we're working with. What we're hearing from those working at the base is there's a complete difference from a private for-profit long-term care compared to a community or a religious-based nursing home. What we are recommending when we're talking to provincial governments is you can have a private nursing home, but the for-profit should never come into effect for the care of either children or elders, similar to our public health care system. And that's where the debate is always. When we enter negotiation with a for-profit, it's a different language than with our community base.
Short. Are you aware of any other wealthy country in the world that had to send its armed forces in to provide assistance in private long-term care homes?
No, no one. And it was very difficult for healthcare workers that had to call on their owners and on their managers for dire help. And when the report came out with the military, everyone, and I'm sure Ms. Hall and Mr. Lake was the same thing, we were all distraught. It was very difficult to read. And we all committed as providers, as owners and policymakers that we would make better. What we question today for nurses, is it the best way to go through the criminal code? That's for your decisions to make as the committee. But for sure, we need clarification in the decision who is responsible and who do you cover with this private members bill, because right now it can attack any nurse working today in a long-term care facility.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. I want to thank all the witnesses and share a little story. I kind of grew up in a old folks home. My mother used to work there, and I used to get babysat for about an hour between shifts. So I vividly remember in my toddler and elementary years of all the work that and the hard work and the bond actually a lot of staffers have with their patients in these old folks homes, or long-term care facilities. So thank you for all the great work you do in all your various sectors, and that part of you're now dismissed. You're more than welcome to watch, as the remaining few minutes or so is also public, but we'll go into committee business for the rest of the meeting. So beginning, I think we have the subcommittee's report. Has everyone seen it? You okay with it? Do we need to repeat it, or are you okay? We're good? Good. Okay, that's approved. Travel to Europe, the travel budget was sent around. I think it's slightly higher than last time. About 15,000. And that's actually to Mr. Garrison's suggestion to make sure there are business arrangements on it. So hopefully that'll be okay, but we'll give it one last try and we'll see if it goes. We all good with that? Yes? And I think that's it. We'll adjourn. Yes, Mr. Garrison.
Mr. Van Popte raised, I think, an important issue today about the cancellation of the second panel where we're not having officials appear. And I think it's very clear that members of the committee would like to have the officials appear. And I guess I've never seen it treated as optional when a committee is asking for advice from the Justice Department that the officials do not appear. So I'm looking for an assurance that even though they didn't appear today, that they will appear to give us their advice on this bill.
Just to let you know, I made the request. Their reply was that because it's a private member's bill, that they don't feel that they can get really partisan viewship or whatever, but I will make a request again. I'll ask Mr. Ananzangari to...
Obviously, we have incredible civil servants, and they make decisions for themselves. But I think if it's the will of the committee, then we too will support their appearance here, and we would maybe ask for it as a joint request from all parties.
Okay. I'll go to Mr. Caputo as he has his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I would echo that. This is something I think we do need some expertise on. I know that my colleague, Mr. Zuberi, asked about, is this a law that, shouldn't we be catching owners? We have to remember that this is an amendment to the criminal code. All criminal law requires intent or some sort of substitution for intent. Forgive me, that's not the best word, but, a negligence or a recklessness. So this isn't something that people generally come to the committee with an open book knowledge of. This is something that I think we need a fair amount of expertise on. That I think justice officials, what I'm trying to say is I think we need their guidance in this, because this is not an easy issue to navigate.
Thank you, Mr. Caputo. And Mr. Garrison?
I would also say that I think that if there was some suggestion that the department never appears on private members' bills, I don't believe that's true in my experience on this committee and other committees. And I don't think it should be true, because private members' bills are not partisan, even though they may have political issues, and they will move through the House like other legislation and become part of legislation. So if we're establishing some sort of precedent that private members' bills, we don't get technical advice from the department, I think that's quite dangerous.
Sure. I'm going to ask them again. So, and before we summon or do anything harsher, I will make a strong assertion to have them back, and I hope they will be back. And if there's a problem, I'll let you all know. Thank you. Okay, we adjourn.